Welcome back to my channel for this week's Human Design Transit Report. Today is Monday, February 20th, 2023. And the new transit starts on Saturday, February 25th. And the transit that we're in right now, I talked about in last week's transit report. So I encourage you to go and check that out here if you want to know where we are right now and what's going to happen through this coming week. I also want to say, if you haven't yet watched the video on the transits called The Essentials You Need to Know or something like that, you can go and watch that here also, because it helps you understand how to use the transits, what it means if the gates that I'm talking about are colored in or defined in your chart, or if they're open, all that sort of thing. So if you're new to the transits, I highly encourage you to go and check that out. All right, let's go ahead and dive in. We're continuing with our theme that we've been on for the last couple of weeks, which is emotional energy. There is this time of year where we just move through the gates of the emotional solar plexus. We have a very kind of emotional time. And I want to underscore that doesn't mean that we're all going to be super emotional necessarily. I mean, it may mean that, but it also means that we have access to really powerful emotional energy to create what we want in our lives. During this transit, the gate 37 is being lit up by the sun, and that's on the emotional solar plexus. We still have Saturn lighting up the gate 30, which I talked about in the last transit report, and also the gate 36 that I talked about in the last transit report. Then there's the 49, which Mercury is lighting up. So you can see we've got a lot of activations that are happening here on the emotional solar plexus. So the 37 and its mate, the 40, are being lit up during this transit. And we've got a bunch of tribal circuitry. The sub-circuit is the commerce circuit or the business circuit or the community circuit. And we've got the 3740, which is what's lit up by the earth and the sun during this transit. But we also have the 4145, which is known as the money line in traditional human design. So there's a lot of support here, if you like, particularly if you have your own business. This is a really great support for you around looking at your resources, looking at your agreements, being able to kind of go back through that sort of thing and saying, okay, we're going to talk about the agreements part, because the 4037 in traditional human design is known as the channel of the bargain, and it's known as the channel of administration in quantum human design. And so that's what we're going to really focus on this time. But Jupiter in the 21 and Mars in the 45 is a really powerful configuration, because the 21 is all about being able to manage our resources. And in quantum human design, Karen Curry Parker, who's my mentor, has renamed it self-management. I do think it has to do with self-management, but I think it has to do with the management of resources. So I do think that there is a bigger component, which is how does the tribe manage its resources, right? So how does our community and our family manage our resources as well? And then the 45 is like the sovereign gate, right? It's the sovereign gate. In traditional human design, it was the king or queen gate. And in quantum human design, it's distribution, right? So again, it's about distributing resources. How do we do that, and how do we do that best? And Mars is the spiritual warrior. And so it's really important for Mars to be in his elevated expression when he's in the 45, because it can also be dictator energy. So you want to watch out for the dictator energy that Mars can fall into. That's like the warring god Mars, right? You want to watch out for that. But you can also have a very benevolent Mars, who's a spiritual warrior, who's really here to help us see how we are going to distribute our resources equitably, right? We're going to do it with the self first, and then we're going to do it with the whole tribe. We want to do this based on really good agreement, which is what the 3740 is all about, okay? Just one of the really important things to get about this channel is it is about agreement. So it's like marriage is here, business contracts are here, legal contracts are here, But it's also about things that maybe are more implicit that we haven't necessarily said out loud and that we maybe haven't written down. So one of the things I would say, because this is tribal energy, when it comes to our more personal relationships, things that are closer in, we want to make sure that we say things out loud, that we're not assuming agreements, that we're not assuming that other people in our lives have the same principles. For example, in relationship, Mercury's lighting up that gate of principles, the 49. Okay, so this is highlighted here just to make sure that you're on the same page with other people. I did a reading for a woman once, and she was expressing her dismay about having talked to and shared something about her heart with this man she was dating. And she didn't appreciate his response because he did not respond to her in an emotional way. And she was really judging him for that. And she really had a lot of issues with that. And I said, well, what kind of agreement or understanding did you have about when you share something that's really close to your heart or your emotion? Like, did you ask him for a certain kind of response? Did you set him up ahead of time to know that you were going to do this? She was like, well, no, he should know. And I was like, should he? Why should he know? That's a big assumption. And she was like, oh my God, I can't believe that. I said, well, yeah. So this is an example, right, where we want to make our agreements explicit. And a lot of times with, people we're dating or our kids or, stuff like that, we may not write it down, but we do want it spoken out loud. And there are times when you might want to write some of it down. But then when it comes to business, you really want to write down your business agreements. Like you want to have, it doesn't necessarily have to be legalese. It doesn't necessarily have to be exactly contractual in that way, right? Because a lot of us are pretty uncomfortable with that. I've started doing it just because I'm protecting my business. And I think it's important as a business owner that I have legal agreements, certainly in certain places in my business. But certainly just even having it written down, like this is my part, this is your part, this is, what I'm going to contribute to the project, this is what you're going to contribute, this is how we're going to distribute the proceeds that come from it, and so on, right? Which is that whole piece about the 2145, right? Which is, well, what do we do with the resources, and, how do we gather resources and then how do we distribute them? And so that needs to be included in your business agreements, right? And marriage originally was a business agreement, right? It was a contract, typically among men, about, what resources were going to be exchanged, and a woman was going to be exchanged as resources. And sometimes a bunch of money went with her so that the person she was marrying would theoretically take care of her because they got her money if it was in that kind of a situation. Because if you didn't have money, marriages were not necessarily contractual in this same way, right? But really the contract of marriage was a business agreement, right? We live in a different world now. It doesn't mean that never happens, but that was the basis for it. So here you want to have these things written out because I have witnessed like people who trade in their business and so on, and they think that it's really clear like what the trade is, and then they get into trouble because they didn't write it down, and one person remembers this and one person remembers that. So just do yourself a favor. And even if you're working for somebody else or you're working in a company, you want to have like a description of what your responsibilities are, and you want it written down what your compensation is going to be and what you maybe need to do to increase your compensation and so on, right? So just paying attention to that. This is kind of the administration in your money world, if you will. Now, if you dial into the individual gates, it really kind of comes across differently, okay? So in traditional human design, the 37 is known as friendship or friendliness, and in quantum human design, it's known as peace. And it is an energy for, if you can imagine having friendliness or coming into creating agreements with the spirit of creating agreements that create peace among everyone involved. That's really a positive thing, right? It's very much a, how do we create agreements that are mutually beneficial for everyone involved? This is the energy that I have in pillar number 7 in feminine sovereignty, which is mutually beneficial collaborations. And so the 37 gives us the energy for making that kind of thing, because it's a generous, right, kind of an energy. It's like, hey, we can work this out. We can heartstorm and find our way and use a positive, uplifted emotional energy in order to create agreements that really work for everybody. Now, the gate 40 in traditional human design is known as loneliness, and in quantum human design is known as restoration. Now, the way that I understand this energy is that it is, rather than there are people, I think loneliness is kind of the disempowered expression of this energy, where even when you're around people, you can still feel lonely. You're not connected. You're kind of, disassociated and disconnected, which is really unfortunate, right? And it doesn't have to be that way at all. But aloneness can be more of, I just need to have some time on my own. And restoration takes it to another level, which is I need to restore. And if you can imagine that you've been involved in business and commerce and coming up with mutually beneficial agreements and so on, that could be kind of draining, right? To constantly be doing that. And so you do need to have some restoration during that time. And I also think it fits because it's on the will center. And the will center, let's remember, works to rest. Right? And so it is an energy for restoration that the will center calls for inside of the business circuit or the commerce circuit. And one general comment that I want to make right now is that all planets are direct right now. And I did a whole series on retrogrades last year. You can go here and watch it. And the gates and the dates will be different this year. But it's the same kind of principle with those outer planets, where they go into a gate and then off into another one, and then they retrograde back and they retrograde back. And they do this kind of back and forth for a long period of time. For some of them, it's almost half the year, right? It's anywhere from 25% to 50% of the year where they're retrograding in and out of just a couple of gates. So you can let me know in the comments if you'd like me to do another retrograde report like I did last year. I haven't had any plans to do that, but if you like that and you'd like to see me do that, let me know down in the comments if you'd like me to do that. I do want to let you know that Pluto is going to retrograde on May 1st. Saturn's going to retrograde in mid-June, and then Neptune's going to retrograde by the end of June. So there we're going to have 3 planets starting in the beginning of May until the end of June. These big planets are going to be going retrograde. Before that happens, right, because we've got some time, this is a really good time to move forward with projects that you have, with plans that you have, to just get involved with that, because all of the energy is moving forward right now. And it won't completely stop, but there is a different quality of energy when the outer planets start to go retrograde. All right, that is my transit report for this week. And I hope that you will join us tomorrow in our Becoming Sovereign virtual retreat center. We're going to be doing a practice where we welcome in Neptune, who is the god of the subconscious, really, and of the sea. And so we're going to be welcoming him in with Pisces, and we're also going to do a Kriya practice. And it is free to you. You just need to join the community and come and go and look for the upcoming events and RSVP for it there. You'll also find the link to join us there, and that's just happening tomorrow. So I hope that you'll join us. All right. Many blessings. Much love.